Hey everybody, welcome back to Threat X3 Productions. I am Nick. Here with me today is...
Nate.
Yes, Nate. And today we are here to talk about The Last of Us. Obviously with The Last of Us Part 2 coming out, we thought, let's talk about the first one, what we thought about it, the impact it had on the industry, everything. Let's just talk everything. So we might be a little bit jumbled, we'll try to be chronological if we're talking about story things. So if you haven't played it, what the hell's wrong with you, number one?
Correct.
Not only is it super cheap, $19.99, but you also had plenty of chances where you actually got it for free like last month. So
Yep.
You have no excuse. Having said that, most people listening to this probably have played it because you're a Sony fan and you know.
And likely you found this video while you were looking up stuff for The Last of Us Part 2. So.
Exactly. So anyways, getting all that aside, so let's start where we usually start, which is like a synopsis. What do you think about The Last of Us in general?
Oh, man. The Last of Us is one of those that I share the same sentiment with a lot of people. It's one of my favorite games of all time. Mm-hmm. But it's one of those that's not like my all-time favorite game, but I recognize that it is a masterpiece. And it is a masterpiece, and it's one of those games that, like Uncharted, revolutionized a lot of things. So did The Last of Us. Right. The Last of Us itself is kind of funny for me personally, because looking back on it, I was not excited for the game. I honestly wasn't. I can recall seeing the gameplay trailer they showed at E3, where they showed you and Ellie in the hallway, and it got real graphic. I was like, oh man, this is cool. This is different. I like this. Never thought about it again. Honestly, never did. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until the game had already come out, me and my other friend were going over to a buddy's house, and this friend is the one who introduced me to a lot of PlayStation stuff. So if there was a new PlayStation only game, he'd be playing it, and I'd witness it. So we go over, and the scene itself, I believe, was whenever they were at the school, whenever they were at the gym. Mm-hmm. But it was like the outside area because it was that real dusk kind of setting. Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about the college, or are you talking about like the school when you were trying to
the school when you're in the gymnasium?
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, that area. I think that's the scene he was playing, but he didn't say hi to us at all. He was just like playing through. So so we just kind of sat down and watched it. I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. Like, what is this? And he was like, it's called The Last of Us. And I was like, it was like a game I had never heard of, didn't know it was coming out, didn't know it was made by the same people who did Uncharted. And I remember picking it up myself and knew the game was going to be a masterpiece in the first 15 minutes when, spoilers, obviously, whatever, you still don't have an excuse. Whenever Joel's daughter dies, like in the first 15 minutes of the game, I start crying, and I'm like, okay, this is going to be a journey. And good Lord, it was.
Good Lord, it was. First off, your sentence, or your few sentences where you're like, I didn't even know that this existed and that it was made by the same people as Naughty Dog. I'm like that does not comprehend. I remember when this was announced at Video Game Awards back when it was on Spike. But I remember that, and I followed this, and Naughty Dog was the reason I was excited for this. Because Naughty Dog, up to that point, obviously had done Uncharted 1, 2, and 3. And then, I think they were working on 4, and they split up into teams where one was Last of Us and one was Uncharted 4 or whatever. And just, dear freaking God, the night and day between me and you, because you, had no hype for it. You forgot about it somehow, which is, blasphemous if you're a Sony pony. But shut the fuck up. But for me, it's like I was no holds bar, excited for this game. I was ready to go. I was just so excited for this game. And so, I mean, that's different between me and you. But talking about that first 15 minutes, it definitely pulled an up on us where it's just like, oh, okay. And I think what the game does overall is it creates characters that are believable. So even just in the 15 minutes that you have to play with the daughter, Sarah, it seems like a real person. So then when she dies, it's just like it hits you, and it hits you hard because you're like, oh,
Yeah.
wow. Now, at the time, I didn't have a kid, replaying it recently. Now I have 2 daughters, so just imagining like one of them dying, and especially in just the way she does, where she's crying and she's like, ow, ow. It was just like, it was hard. You know what I mean? I was like, that's hard to watch or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the relationship that ends up growing between Joel and Ellie is very much like, I love it. And once again, it's just because they look like, real people. I mean, yeah, so once again, that is the main thing about this story. I feel like that it just makes you feel like they're real people. Even down to the enemies, because, at first, through a good portion of the game, it's like, here's just waves and waves of hunters, but it still kind of makes you feel like they're people, because it's like, oh, these are people trying to survive, granted they're evil people or whatever, but you kind of see into their lives through the environmental storytelling. Obviously there was an uprising or something like that. But not only that, but then it almost kind of humanizes them, because during the part where you're playing as Ellie, you confront a man who's like the leader of that group that you pretty much slaughtered.
Yeah.
And so he's not happy about it, and he's been searching for you. It's like, it's really crazy. Just this storytelling, crafting in the game is just amazing, But yeah, I think this game more so than a lot of games out is one that really marries the overall world and atmosphere with its gameplay. Because it very much seems like you're trying to survive, you're scraping together things, and that really goes with the gameplay. Now, obviously, the stealth, we can get into the stealth later, whatever. The stealth isn't really great, especially when Ellie literally stands out in the middle of nowhere and they don't see her. It's very comical. I understand why they went that direction, but at the same time, I just wish they would have maybe made some kind of a way for me to tell her, hey, go stand over here. And then if she got caught, it was because I chose a bad hiding spot for her. But yeah, when she literally stands up, there is one part, it's very comical, where she's literally standing out in the middle of the nowhere. There's a guy right in front of her. She does this thing where she clips on the environment, so she's running in place, and then she finally gets behind cover. And I'm like, it's very immersion breaking.
Yeah.
But aside from those very few immersion breaking moments, the game itself is just masterfully done. It really immerses you in the game, whether or not you're watching the narrative or playing the game.
Yeah, I mean, I'll kind of piggyback on what you said about the gameplay and everything. It's one of those that prior to it, at that time frame, I actually don't know if I played many Uncharted games. No. I'm trying to think. So for me, I was not a Sony pony for a while. I went from PS2 to GameCube to Xbox 360. Didn't have PS3 at all. So it was one of those games that I was at the time fully immersed in. It was one of those. It's not like I'm consciously playing a video game. I am in this world. I'm observing and I'm controlling what's going on, and just how much, like you were saying, it matches together the story as well as what you're doing every single moment in the game. You're trying to, let's say you're trying to do a stealth kill, you miss your arrow shot. I am out of arrows. I have nothing to do. I've either got to hide or run up and attack him. The game gives you have to figure out what's going. It's not like where I'm playing Far Cry 5 again and I have 25 arrows and Molotovs and rocket launchers and stuff. It's so grounded. Now, speaking of grounded, never played Never played Last of Us on anything but like normal difficulty. So like I was already stressed as is on normal mode. I didn't really want to go through anything else. But one of the things that I found really interesting, because I've probably gone through about 3 playthroughs of The Last of Us. First one originally on PS3. Second one, what?
4 for me. 2 on the PlayStation 3, 2 on the PlayStation 4. So anyways,
yeah, No, I thought you were correcting me on the PlayStations. I was like, wait, what? So yeah, 1 on PS3, and then I think 2 on PS4. Nice. Like once when Remastered first came out, and then later on. That's another thing that I give the game credit for, is being able to be different each time, or evolve on itself even more. Yeah. Like
it is a huge compliment for me to say that I've played a game multiple times. When I was probably a wee little lad of 12 years old or something, I discovered something called Software Etc., which was the mall's version of GameStop. They ran everything through GameStop. They sold Game Informers. They were GameStop, but for some reason they called themselves Software Etc. So regardless, I discovered GameStop, and I discovered trading in games so I can get other games. So since I was 12, pretty much when I was done with the game, I'm like, okay, what's the next game? You know, what's that next game? What am I going to play next? You know, that's always been my mentality. Even now that I'm really digital, so I buy the game and it's permanently mine no matter what I do. Even now, most of the time when I finish a game, it's almost immediately dead to me. Which is why, like, I've never been like a trophy hunter, because like I don't replay games. So for me, that's one reason this is like one of the best games of all time, because it's gotten me out of that mindset of I played this game and okay, let's move on. This is a game that legitimately once every year and a half, I want to go back and revisit. Like, I don't have games like that. I just don't. Like, so yeah, it's amazing just the fact that a game can do that to me anymore. So anyways, I apologize. Go on.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing that we're very different about. Like, I love to be a completionist, but funny enough, not with The Last of Us. I have never had the incentive to play through like just to play through to get all the collectibles. Like, I have no desire to get all the collectibles on The Last of Us. The platinum itself fucking sucks. I mean, just regardless on PS3 or PS4, like it's not worth it to me.
Multiplayer ones, right?
Part of it, but the multiplayer I don't mind. Like, the multiplayer in The Last of Us, I actually genuinely enjoyed and loved. But it's the
I was just talking about the trophies in order to get the platinum.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, now you can't, I don't think, because I think they have shut down the servers. But I mean, even back then, I was like, wow, I'm not going to do this. But my desire to replay The Last of Us is for the story and for the experience. It's very going to give kind of a weird comparison with like Inception to me. Inception is a movie that every time I watch it, I evolve my understanding of it, and I either enjoy it or don't enjoy it as much as I did prior.
Right.
Same way with The Last of Us. Like, when I played through it the first time, I was enthralled with the experience, but when it got to the ending, I didn't like the ending at all. I was like, why don't I have a choice? This is dumb. Like, why are you just forcing me to do this? Like, I didn't look at it with any context or really understand it. But I still enjoyed my overall experience. When I went through it a second time on PS4, which even back then was crazy, going from what it was looking beautiful on PS3 to first time on PS4, like, holy shit.
Yeah.
It was such night and day difference. But when I replayed it again and got to that same part, I was like, oh my God, I get it.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah. So, I mean, since we're getting into the story, let's start talking about the story. But I mean, in a second, but let's talk a little bit more about like the gameplay. More specifically, the stealth. The stealth, I feel, is really well done. And in my opinion, let me know let me know if you know of any games. But in my opinion, I think this is one of the only and or the very first game to allow you to go into an alert stage and then go hide, and then they don't know where you are. Most of the time, stealth games, up until this point, as soon as you made like one wrong move, the alarm was set and everybody automatically knew where you were. Even if you set the alarm over here and then went somewhere else and nobody saw you do that, they would still know exactly where you were. And this is one of the very first games that really made me feel like it was a world that was alive. Because it's like, if I, was really loud over here, like I shot my shotgun a couple of times, I could then dip out, flank them. They are trying to go out. They're trying to go after me in the area that I was shooting off my shotgun. You know what I mean? Like, that just doesn't normally happen.
See, it's one of those, I'm trying to think in the context of 2013 when the game first came out.
Right.
Because, like, I know, like, example, because I'm replaying it, like Far Cry 5, I can do that exact thing that you're mentioning.
Right.
Where I will, like, and that's what I'll do is I'll distract and then I'll go and flank and they don't see it. But, like, I'm trying to think even with, like, Far Cry 3, if that was the case, because I never really attempted. I was either stealth or I went full loud.
Yeah.
But I think that to further go through what you're saying, it's the first time it felt like it mattered. It felt like what you were doing in the game mattered. So if you got caught, it was like, that's a legit life or death situation because they make that so grounded and real.
Yeah, they make it feel that way. If you get caught, they make it feel like it matters. And I think that one of the ways they do that is by making an escort mission into something that you care. Like 90% of escort missions basically are just eye rolling, like, oh, here we go again, especially in something like
Creed.
Yeah,
is a big one.
Especially in like back in the day when they had like Dead Rising, and they, my God, those people were so freaking dumb. They just did not understand anything. So to have an escort mission that makes sense and fits into the universe and makes you actually feel more for that person. So when I'm stealthing around, I'm not just stealthing to make sure that I can get on to the next chapter, so I can get on to the next save point, so I can get on to the next, encounter. I'm stealthing because I don't want Ellie to be hurt. I have like a personal attachment to Ellie, and I don't want her to die. I don't want her to get hurt. And they make that feel even more real by actually having like Ellie come and help you every once in a while. Like, it was so amazing how, like, sometimes I would start beating up on somebody, and maybe they would get the better on me. Like, I didn't press triangle to counter at the right time, and so they started beating on me. All of a sudden, Ellie or, like, one of the other people, like Michael, I think, is one of them, and Tess is another one, they would all of a sudden come out of nowhere and beat them up or whatever and help me out. And I'm like, whoa. So that just goes back to, like, the immersion. Granted, not during stealth, but that really helped with the immersion of feeling like, okay, we're in this together, and creating that camaraderie was extremely important to making me feel like everything mattered. Everything made sense.
Yeah. I 100% agree. And I think it's funny that you're talking about Ellie, because I know for the longest time, like leading up to God of War, for example, people, when you saw gameplay and stuff with Atreus, thinking back on God of War, I very much used him as a gameplay mechanic. I used him as a tool. Like, it was one of those, I wasn't really, like, I was Kratos and I'm in a pinch. Hey, get these guys off me. I'd use him as a tool. Whereas Ellie, it's the exact same thing. You're basically caring for her the entire game, and every action you do can have a negative effect on her as well. And so I'm curious as far as like the gameplay itself. Having replayed it yourself recently, which that's another thing we'll talk about. I have not played through it in a long time. Nick just recently did it. In the context of today's games and what we're playing, what stands out to you as far as something that's like, ooh, we have something better now?
That's a hard one, Because even replaying it with today's context, it's still, in my eyes, revolutionary. It still holds up, for sure. Like, even though this was you said 2013 game or 2012? Yeah. So even though it's still an older game, it still holds up. Not only because I'm playing the remastered version, so it still looks a lot more gorgeous. Wow. I don't know if that's proper English. But not only does it look gorgeous, it still plays really well. I think the main things that do stand out after the fact is kind of the stealth encounters. How, especially playing on like easy, for instance, I could walk out in the middle of a corridor. You would hear that, and it would get louder, and then until it was bing, or it was almost like a gong, gong, and that's when you knew you were caught or somebody saw you. But you could like roam out into the middle of a corridor. It'd be like, and then just get right behind something, and they'd be like, "Oh, yeah, must have been the wind." Those kind of things definitely stand out to me more. But unfortunately, like that's just stealth in any game. Because unless you have it like on hardcore mode or whatever, they very much they're trying to give you leeway for like if you accidentally pressed away that you didn't mean to or something like that. Having said that, I have played it on grounded. Not this playthrough. I played through maybe a good chunk of it grounded, and then to make sure that I could get through the whole thing before Last of Us 2 came out, I started over at easy, just so that basically I can just have the story and the experience or whatever. But playing through it on grounded, it actually gets rid of that. So it makes it a lot more realistic. Now, granted, you still have the issue where if Tess or Ellie are out in the middle of nowhere, they still don't get seen, So there is that. But like I said before, like I get why they did it. Because just imagine how many times that happens. Granted, it's not all the time, but it's enough where if they got caught, or if you got caught, rather, because they were out in the middle of nowhere, you'd be like, come on, stupid AI. Which now is still stupid, but at least you're not getting affected gameplay-wise, So it's weird. But I don't know, because I love there's so much about this game that I love. I love the guns. I love the way you aim. I love the way aiming feels. Aiming never feels like when I point there, I'm going to shoot there. It feels like I'm holding up a weapon. It has weight to it, and I might not make my shot. And smash cut to suddenly I have a baby in my arms. But even the aiming, it feels like there's purpose to it. You don't just make every shot, unless you're really good at the game, obviously. But even so, it's like I do feel like there's actual weight to it. The crafting system, I love the crafting system and how a lot of things share ingredients. So like a good example is I could make a med pack, but then those same ingredients is what I need for a Molotov. So if I'm not careful, if I'm not strategic, I could use up all my cloth and alcohol for Molotovs, and all of a sudden I'm in a pinch where I have like a sliver of health and I can't make myself a med pack. And so little mechanics like that I really like, because once again that just fits the immersion, it fits the atmosphere of everything. So it's really hard to say like, oh, what would I think stands out? Because it's like there's a lot of things that I think more games should have started doing.
And I think that you might find this comparison apt. For me, I'm very much excited for The Last of Us Part 2 for a lot of different reasons. But for one, having, I went and watched some gameplay of The Last of Us because, like I said, it's been a while since I've seen it. And watching gameplay footage just in general of it, I'm like, wow. And after seeing what I've seen of The Last of Us Part 2, I'm like, The Last of Us, I think, is the swan song to the engine they were using for Uncharted 3.
Oh, yeah, right.
And The Last of Us Part 2 is going to be what Uncharted 4 did, but leaps and bounds. Like, it's going to even look better than that. So it's kind of cool to see this history with Naughty Dog. Like, you look back and like I said, watch Last of Us, it's like, oh wow, I could see a lot of Uncharted 3 in this, in terms of, engine, and it's a lot more personal than kind of grand scale. And Uncharted 4 is leaps and bounds, what Uncharted 3 was. And then so it's kind of one of those things. I could see an argument technically being made for this being one of Naughty Dog's best games of all time, technically, because it's an evolution of what they've done for these past several games. And that leads into perfectly what you were talking about earlier when it comes to stealth. And, with the whole thing of breaking kind of immersion of, oh, it's just wind. Oh, okay, never mind. With the whole feature of being able to have the dogs track you in The Last of Us Part 2. Like, first off, that's great and awesome. Second off, it scares the shit out of me, because how much more tense is that going to be for my gameplay?
Right.
Like, of having to worry about, oh my God, this dog's following me. Now, it's cool you can see like your scent path, so you can kind of strategize how you're going to maneuver that. But that also gives you the conversation of, am I going to have to kill this dog, or am I going to try to way to evade? So
right.
I see what you're saying, where there's not really much I find wrong with The Last of Us Part 1.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's definitely one of those, like, looking at what we have now, it's like a time capsule in a way.
Yeah.
And I think that that's perfect. I think the game can stay like that, and just to show a measure of, hey, this is where we were at this time, and we were phenomenal then. Look at us now.
Yeah. Look at me now. I'm getting papers. Yeah, so now we can kind of get into the story a little bit more. We'll try to stay chronological. We're not going to go through the entire thing, but more so what I want to talk about is like the pacing and the different chapters or whatever. So that's kind of more what I want to talk about. So obviously we open up, and I thought it was actually an interesting way, because obviously this came right after, like you were saying, Uncharted 3. So there was a section in Uncharted 3 where you get to play as young Nate.
Yeah.
So this was interesting, because then they start the game, instead of starting as the titular character or whatever, you're actually playing as his daughter. So that was really interesting. But then if you go into like the psychology of it, it made so much sense, because it really put you in this vulnerable state where it's the beginning of the apocalypse and you're this little kid and you just don't know what's going on. Adults have a little bit more of an understanding of, social norms and just overall just what's good, what's bad. And so seeing that difference and putting you into the shoes of a kid really just, I felt like, put an apocalypse into a new lens. Because it's like, whether it be through TV, movies, other games, we've been through apocalypses. We've been through them tons of times. But now putting it in the lens of a child really made you feel all the feelings you should be feeling at the beginning of apocalypse.
Yeah, instead of showing you what you would think an apocalypse situation would be, they made you feel it. And like, it really was a day zero situation. That I think, it's not just the events with Sarah, but that first 15 minutes as a whole really sets up very well the rest of the game. And it's I'd actually forgotten about that. That you play as Sarah instead of Joel. Right. But like you saying that, I can remember when you go and interact and it turns into a cutscene where you're giving the watch to Joel. It's like, at the time I was like, oh my God, that was cool. Technically I was like, that was really cool. And I'm along for this movie. And that's, I think, even at the very beginning, it just felt so cinematic.
Definitely. So you think you're gonna escape. It's like you're holding your child and like running with her was also a really good narrative tool, because they weren't quite ready to give you a weapon and make you
fight
and make you a badass. They weren't ready for that yet. So how did they deal with it to make sure that you were still helpless? Well, you're holding your helpless child, and you can't hold a gun. So that was another way of them like still putting you in the action, because it's like, now I physically have this person in my arms like I do right now, and I have to keep this safe. and you took a wrong turn and you would get hit by an infected and they would immediately bite you. You know what I mean? Like, and so putting yourself through that and then finally getting to a point where it's like, I think I'm out. Like, oh, this guy just saved me. Oh, thank God. But then, oh no, he's going to shoot us and he ends up shooting your kid. Like, that moment where it's like the tension was just rising and rising. And I love the way they had it set up where if you remember, you walk out of the diner. No, it was a bar. You walk out of this bar. There's this little hole in the wall and some caution tape, kind of like aching you to go that way. So you start going that way. When you start going that way, you run past an ambulance. Infected start coming out. Then it has you run down a certain way where the lights are beaming that way, and you can see the shadows getting closer and closer. So like the way they built up that tension was just perfect. And so to have that tension at its very highest, where it's like even just the slightest prick will make it snap, and then your daughter gets shot, was just like it was the perfect start to what you're going to experience throughout the entire fucking game.
Yeah, and then I think that hits immediately, and it's a great transition into what happens in the next scene when you go, and what is it, 15 years later?
Yes.
Okay, so 15 years later, you see what I think is so beautiful about that transition from that scene is you see Joel broken. Yeah. This man just lost his daughter. And you see practically pretty much immediately, 15 years later, the next thing you see is him grizzled. You can see the effects of that moment breaking him, and he's just this different person. And it goes right into just this scene of, hey, this is the world now. Like the fact that they jump cutted that, and instead of going through like, hey, this is the evolution of what happened, I think is another decision that's very fitting, and I think capitalizes on the story, because you're just like, you were thrown into that situation, you're thrown into this, and it really helps kind of procure a feeling of helplessness throughout the entire experience.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, then from there we're basically going on a mission, and it's a very like selfish mission. It's a very self-gratifying mission, because all we're trying to do is like, we're trying to get back at a guy that fucked with us, basically, because he like stole some guns or something. So it's very self-fulfilling. Like, it has nothing to do with like, oh, we're a good person. No, in all manners, we're actually like a bad person. We're a criminal for all intents and purposes. And so it kind of shows you, like you were saying, just how much different it is. Before, post, or pre, pandemic, we were a construction worker. We were, happy-go-lucky, just red-blooded American. Now we are a hardened criminal. And that juxtaposition is just what really cements what your daughter dying really did to you, especially when you get these little breadcrumbs throughout the story of things that you did in the past. They never outright say it, but there's little breadcrumbs. So anyways, you're going on this mission, and that's when you meet up with someone, totally forgot her name, but it's the
Tess.
No, it's the leader of the Fireflies.
Oh. Yeah, I don't remember her name either.
Don't remember her name. Anyways, you meet up with her, and she basically has someone that you want to smuggle out. So, yeah, and at first you don't want to be there. You don't want to do this. You're only doing it because the only reason you're doing it is because you will get your guns back. So once again, it's a very selfish reason for you to be doing this. And even as you're doing it, it's like it's more Tess that is convincing you to do it than you are. Then you go through a bunch of stuff. Tess gets bit. Tess dies. So now you're no longer doing it because you want to do it. You're doing it out of an obligation for a relationship that you had with a woman. And she's like, hey, you have to complete this for me. Otherwise, essentially, my death is for nothing. And so you're doing it more. And I mean, he shows that right off the bat, because like Ellie tries to be like, hey, I'm sorry about Tess. And he's like, let me get one thing straight. We're not going to talk about her.
Yeah, it's definitely he's not really welcoming to Ellie at first. He's very much like, this is you are my duty. Like I don't want to be in this situation, but I have to be.
Right.
And right then and there, it's you're kind of expecting, like, at least for me when I started the game, during that scene and during those kind of first few moments where you first meet Ellie, and then the whole thing with Tess, I was like, oh, he lost his star at the beginning. He's going to like want to have that relationship with her, and that's immediately not the case.
Right.
It wants nothing to do. And it's so interesting because you see, like, that's almost a confirmation of how he's changed, how he's changed from the person he used to be. And majority of that's because the world was that way. And I'm sure that there might have been some revenge at some point, needing to get some spied out, and that's kind of what turned him in a lot of ways.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, him not liking her at first was very good because it makes it more believable too. It's like, here's this kid, I mean, because the old adage is like, even if you hate kids right now, it's different when it's your kid. And that's so freaking true. So it's like, to him, it's just like, here's this kid. It's this responsibility. It's this burden, and that seemed more believable than him just immediately going, oh, there's this kid. I have to protect it. I really like that about it. So, I mean, they need to get essentially like a cross country. So we're going on a road trip. They meet up with a guy named Bobby. They have to go to a whole nother town, which is a whole nother endeavor itself, because like getting into the town, he's booby-trapped it, and he clearly doesn't want people there. And so you have to get a car. And so you start. I think one thing I absolutely love about like Ellie's character and how you can start to see it grading onto Joel is that Ellie will not shut the hell up.
Yeah.
She's like, wow, look at this. Wow, look at this. Look at this. There's magic everywhere. What's this? Like,
yeah,
everything. There's a stork and it flies off. She's like, wow, that's cool. Ooh, trees. I've never seen trees before. And so then you start piecing it together. It's been 15 years. She was born post-apocalyptic. So she's never been outside the place that she's been at. So it's like trees. She's never seen trees. She doesn't know what a movie is. Like, she's heard what a movie is, but then she'll see like a movie poster and she'll be like freaking mesmerized by it.
Yep. Yeah, and it's one of those that not only does it progress the story and it also progresses the gameplay of you as the player, because that's your breadcrumbs. That's what you get from trying to figure out what's happened in between then and 15 years later.
Yeah.
Like, he's given her kind of a brief, and it's like, it's given you the thought in your head of, oh yeah, how would I explain this to someone if I am like thinking nostalgic of, oh yeah, I remember this, and that's not the world I live in anymore. So it's such an interesting like personal study to yourself, but also helps progress the story in a very brilliantly written gameplay manner.
Oh, speaking of brilliantly gameplay manner, this is the first time I've ever seen this done, and I love it. So I remember back in my day, when you play like Resident Evil or Dino Crisis or like any other kind of games like that, you'd have to go read documents, and then maybe you have like this notepad that you write down passwords to so you can remember them. But you had to read all these things, and you just had to read them. What I love that Last of Us did, it's just a little like cherry on top. But not only do they have these very realistically written notes, but then when you get out of them, your characters actually comment on them. And I was like the first time I really noticed it, because it happened before this, but I just never really noticed it. The first time I really noticed it is you go into this one building, because you were chasing after an infected. You go into this one building, you take care of the infected, then you look over at this mantle, and there's this big word, Rachel, pointing down to a note. So you grab the note, and it's the husband essentially saying, hey, we got split up. I had to get moving because they were making us go to this quarantine zone. Make sure to meet me there. And so you have that little note, and it's like, oh wow, that I wonder if they got together. So you get out of that, and that's exactly what the characters say. The character's like, oh man, do you think they met up? And so actually like commenting on it goes back to the immersion where it just makes it feel like a real thing that's happening. I read that note and now I'm commenting on that note. I'm like, I love that. And it's just such a small thing, like you wouldn't think means anything, but it means the world. It means that these characters are living in this world. And I love that about it. It's such a small thing. But yeah, that happens in the town. That was the first time I really noticed it.
Yeah, and what's also really nice about this scene and this level in particular is like it's the first time you're in a different experience. Like the whole interaction with Bill, and that whole scene, you're coming across like masks of like infected. I mean, previously it was just like you maybe had an encounter here or there,
True,
but it was mostly like person to person stuff, like the whole scene with Tess and killing Robert.
Yeah.
So where with this, you're having to either evade. You as a player trying to figure out what's the best way to handle these situations. Do I need to go through my ammo, or do I need to just evade and go around? And that's something that's cool that it allows you to evolve. I can recall like that's my first instinct was just to silently kill everything.
Right.
And then after other playthroughs, I was like, I think I can just avoid this area altogether.
Yeah.
Like here, throw a bottle over there, distract him, and then just dodge away. And like it felt right. It didn't feel like I was cheating the game.
True.
And oh my God, we cannot like going into moments of this game. Isn't this the moment, this whole area with Bill where you get trapped upside down?
Yes.
In the garage?
Yes.
When that happened.
That's literally right before, because he saves you. You get cut down, and then he comes and saves you.
When that moment happened, and you're like in basically a what's the word I'm looking for?
You're in a fight or flight moment where you cannot flight.
yeah, and you can't like if you miss, you're dead. Like you have to make your shots count. You're not like an unlimited, and you just have like massive amounts of infected running at you while you're trying to make sure that what is it? Ellie's trying to release the to let you down.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's just like it's gripping, and it gives you a oh my God, I have to pay attention. Like I have to. You're not just along for the ride. You're in it.
Yeah.
And like that's it. I still think about that moment.
I know. That's one that always sticks out to me, especially in that area. The other moments that really stick out to me is you finally get to the school, which is, gut-wrenching in the first place because you can take the first part on pretty stealthily, but then there's a trigger where you walk past a certain part and all of a sudden just tons start coming towards you and you have to make your way there quickly or, shit's going to go down. You're going to die.
Yeah.
So that's stressful enough. But then you get into the actual school itself and you get your first taste of a bloater, which is like an infected that's been infected for so long, there is just stuff coming out of him everywhere. And he can throw like acidic spores at you. Like it's crazy. Yeah. And it didn't necessarily feel like a boss fight, but at the same time, I was like, here's this giant thing that we have to overcome. And then we're trying to make it up we're trying to make it out the window. And then we're trying to do this. And it's like just one thing after another. It's like, it really ramps up and just such a believable way. And it feels really good,
Yeah.
Because
and then
so go ahead.
I was gonna say, and then it just plays immediately right into, other emotions. Like once you get not exactly through that area, but towards the end of this whole encounter with Bill, he's kind of been aggressive, like fuck this, fuck that kind of guy. Like, what are you doing here? And then they pretty much end that scene on you going into this house. I think this is where you end up getting the truck.
Yeah.
And Joe's like, who the hell is this guy? And he's like, that's my partner. And like all of a sudden this character you can connect with emotionally when you couldn't previously, because he's like going into this, he's like, and he's still that character because he goes, I think it's something along the lines of no one will wear a shirt, no other idiot will wear a shirt like that. And it's letting you feel for, it's kind of, I think the other time you're aware that you're not just caring about the characters you are directly playing as, like you're giving a shit about the other characters that are in this world. They're not just fodder for you to experience with. It's the first 3 hours of this game, good God, are such an emotional roller coaster. And then like towards the middle, it gets stressful as hell. And then the very end, it's the combination of both. I mean, it's one of those, this game is such a nerve-wracking game in general, but it's, yeah, but I mean, like that, and that's what's great about that scene is the adventure continues from there. And what I really enjoy is the following scene where you're in the truck with Ellie, and that I kind of gives you that first breakdown of, whoa, she won't shut the hell up. But it's like a real kind of bonding experience. Like you can kind of see Joel getting to the point where he's like, oh well, you're not as bad. Like she's charming to you, and it's very much a nice. I don't know if this will make sense to you. Like when you fast travel in a game, and sometimes you kind of wish like you could experience what that like I guess in Grand Theft Auto, like when you take a cab, you can either just fast travel there or you can join the ride. This scene in particular is you joining the ride, and
for sure,
it's a nice little like kind of break it gives you.
I mean, especially just after everything that just happened, like it's a nice break. And it's very character developing because, like you said, like, you still think she's being annoying, but it's like it's starting to get to you. Which brings us to the whole hunter section of the game, which is, like you said, super stressful. Now, instead of worrying about infected, you're worrying about human beings that can think. And, like, the infected, for the most part, are pretty easy to, mess with and get your way with. Whereas, like, humans, now we're dealing with people who can think, who can, like, flank me just as much as I can flank them. And so dealing with that was just a whole nother thing. And especially having a section that was essentially only infected that you had to worry about. Now having a segment where it was only humans, like, the juxtaposition was just so interesting. This is also where we get... And this is what I love about this game, is that it mixes gameplay... moments of tension with moments of clarity, with moments of character development. So this is where we start getting breadcrumbs, where he doesn't outright say it or say what he does, but it's like they almost got tricked, where somebody was quote unquote hurt, but he knew he wasn't hurt. And so like Ellie's like, how did you know that? He's like, I've been on both sides of that. And so then like it's so interesting because Ellie starts treating him different. This person where at first, like, she knew he was, a shady guy, but she still kind of respected him. She has this kind of moment where she's just like, oh my God, this guy actually, like, robbed people. Like, this guy's fucked up. This is the person I'm going on this adventure with? What the hell? Which almost reminds me of that moment in God of War, which I know this is, like, years later, but still. That moment in God of War where Atreus finds out he's a god, and so you have this segment of the game where he's acting like a little fucking asshole.
My God, dude, like
But it makes sense, right? Because he just found out he was a god. What 8-year-old wouldn't find out he was a god and start acting like a little fucking pill?
Yeah, he was a little. Oh my God, why did you bring that memory? Like, I didn't need that. Like, that was something I washed away in my head.
But no, that kind of like they were building a relationship. They got to a point where, like you said, he started seeing how charming she was, and then to kind of have that little like roadblock essentially in their relationship where, oh, you used to do stuff like this, you're a piece of shit. And to have her kind of treat you like that, but then you still have to go through. And then the biggest moment of this area is like when you guys get split up.
Are you talking about the part where you start to get attacked and then she comes back and she kills the guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's another character moment of like, oh, this is the first time I've killed someone,
Right.
and it lets you grip with that. So I think throughout this entire game, because I think we'll just end up saying the same thing over and over again. Like,
Okay.
what is so perfect about this is not only letting you as a player feel what's going on and understand and have some kind of control in your actions, but it also has a meaning throughout the story. Like typically in games prior to this, you'd have cutscenes and you'd have the actual game.
Yeah.
Gameplay itself, and they'd be two separate. These are one and the same.
Yes, definitely.
And it so you go from having such a tense moment of life or death to yourself, and then her shooting that guy is almost a relief, but then you're back into it of you just killed someone. That's the first time you've killed someone. Right. And then you are trying to feel those same emotions as well. Let me ask you a question. What is your favorite portion of the game? Ooh. Like, as far as like the middle, beginning, or end?
I actually have to say this moment, the whole hunter moment, because I feel like that's when you
the first time you really get the difference of, oh, it's not just infected. I'm having to worry about. Yep.
Yeah. I think it is this moment, but also just looking from it from beginning to end, I really feel like this is the part where they go through a lot of shit together. And so then in the next, we can't go too far forward.
Yeah.
But when he does finally decide to stick with her, it's because of this. So it's like, this is the most character development, I think.
Yeah.
So you meet up with Michael and his brother, Sam. You meet up with them.
Henry and Sam.
Yeah. You meet up with them, and they start helping you out. Henry fucking leaves you. You're like, what the fuck, dude? Like, you guys are just about to get out of there, and he's like, sorry guys, dip. But at the same time, it was just like interesting because you meet it back up with them and you're ready to fucking kill him. And Ellie's like, no. He got you out of the water. He saved us. And it's like, fine.
Yeah. I think that this part of the story and the game itself is my favorite. The entire start to finish with Henry and Sam, because you just got this large amount of distrust from the scene prior to where someone's faking you out. So it's as a character and even as a player, you're like, can I trust this person? So you're one and the same, and the gameplay sections throughout, like hiding through the kind of neighborhood area, trying to be stealthy, and then having to basically go. This is the first time where I think it feels the most gamey, because you're pretty much it's like a tower defense in a way, where you've got hordes amassing to you, but it felt good. Like, it felt like, oh my god, like this is an experience. Like, everything felt genuine and real.
Right. And it was also kind of a moment where it's like you thought you had escaped, but then to realize that you're being pursued was also like what made the eventual like tower defense, like you were saying, where you're just like snipe. It made it really empowering, because it's like for the most part, you've been trying to just survive, whereas now like you're giving the punishment back to them.
Yeah, and I think what's great about this whole area is, in the game as well as even with the cutscenes itself, you and Henry are forming a bond, and Ellie and Sam are. Wait, let me make sure I don't have the name switched, because that's a very real possibility.
Sam is definitely the little one.
Okay. So Ellie and Sam's relationship is building as well. Like, you're getting to watch both, and you're getting to see the perspective of the adults and the kids.
Sure. And
it helps you kind of get a better whole understanding of what is occurring. And that the tower defense, how was it on Grounded? Can you recall that part? Because I feel like that would be a pain in the ass.
I don't think I gotten to that point in Grounded. I remember getting to the hunters and starting that section on Grounded, but by then, I wanted to start over so I can make sure I get through all of it, because it definitely, and granted, that was like a couple months back. I started a Grounded one, And then I rolled credits just last weekend, or like this most recent weekend. So yeah, it was pretty much to the point where it's like, not only had I not played it in a couple of months, but it's like I was already so much through the game that I was like, all right, let me just start over. So, but yeah, I definitely got into the hunters, and once you started having like thinking people on Grounded, yeah, you definitely started feeling it.
Yeah, and I think another reason why this is my favorite scene is it has to be the scene that follows that what ends up happening with Sam and Henry.
Yeah.
I feel got me almost more than Sarah dying in the beginning, because it was so from here, throughout, and I don't recall actually what moment it was. I think it was during the like house siege and the assault.
Yeah.
But Sam ends up getting bitten and doesn't tell anyone about it. And then finally, when they're kind of back in their hideout or back in the little whatever room that they're in, Sam ends up attacking Ellie, and they see that he was bitten. And from there, the whole what follows, Henry ended up having to shoot him, and then just as Joel and Ellie are leaving, you hear the gunshot go off, and you realize he's committed suicide. Or wait, no, did he commit suicide right in front of him?
He does it right in front of him.
That's right. I remember being emotionally scarred by that scene, but I couldn't remember at how much I was.
Right.
But yeah, just seeing that, the guy having to kill his brother,
right,
someone who is his charge to take care of, and just being overwhelmed by it. It's like, that's a scene that I will never forget in video games ever. It still sticks with me to this day.
Yeah. I mean, the way it ends, the way like it culminates, and I think, like you were saying, why it was so much more impactful is because, granted, you only had like 15 minutes to get to know Sarah, whereas like these people, you were fighting and bleeding with these people. And to see it happen that way, even though maybe you kind of saw it coming, because it's like something eventually is going to happen, like you definitely didn't expect this, because all the tension was gone. It was. Everything was cooling down.
Yeah, you guys were hanging out. You were eating dinner. You were, just bonding as characters and developing a relationship.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, hey, this is going to be all right. And then there was a little bit of a hint, because like the way Sam talks to Ellie, and it's just like, what do you think it's like? And like, oh geez, like, and then, it happens. It's just like, oh man. Like, and then like they kind of snap to, I think that's when they snap to summer. Or no,
there's definitely a time jump, but yeah,
because the next part's winter with just Ellie. So yeah, they snap to fall. They've clearly made it quite a ways, and they are still affected by it, so much so that like Joel doesn't even want to talk about it, but Ellie does. She's like, hey, I want to talk about this, but Joel's like, hey, let's get going, we have something to focus on. Which is, you can just see the difference of like not only just a girl, but like a young girl, and how an older man is trying to just bury it down, just don't even think about it, and versus a girl who's like in her teens, and she's like, no, I'm emotional, I want to talk about this, and
the next part too, it goes into just as a player, first time experiencing, it's like, oh, we're getting different biomes in a way. Like every area they're showing so far is different, and this first time you're seeing a lot of really beautiful green. And what leads into next, going to find Tommy and actually finding him a character. At this point through my playthrough, I forgot about from the very beginning. Like I remembered Tommy, but like I didn't have really a connection with him because it was so fast. So it's not like with, I guess, Uncharted 4 and I'm talking about Sam, like within the first time meeting him, I was like, oh, I know him about a little bit already. But like just being able to see this new area, and it's lush and it's green, and I think this is where you're at the Hydrodome, correct?
Yep.
The Hydrodam, and seeing the water, and it's just like a nice little puzzle. And from here is where I think, not that it took a turn for me, but it was to the point where I'm like, okay, like I feel stressed. Like I feel like, you know, later on going into it, it was kind of cool to see a very community setting. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
this is kind of the first time you've seen the first time you see civilization post the beginning is very much in a government controlled city, like
yeah. True,
lockdowns in
true.
effect, all that kind of good stuff. This is more like not necessarily a free society, but a society of people who are, you know, a functioning society
Sure,
post
sure.
pandemic.
Yeah, I like that, and I also just I love throughout this game where there's highs and lows, but when you have the lows, it's not like here we go again, a bunch of talky talk. You know what I mean? It's not annoying because once again they feel so real, and to have this moment where you're so invested in the quest, but then the character himself is like, all right, so I'm just gonna trade this girl off on you. Give me some equipment. I'm getting the fuck out of here. Like, but you can almost see, especially by the end of this whole like scene or whatever, you can see that that was really just his defense mechanism. Like he's getting too close to her. He doesn't want to see her die. He doesn't want to see her hurt. So instead of embracing that and, you know, making sure that he keeps her safe, instead of doing that, he's like, no, I'm out of here. Kind of like when somebody's like afraid of commitment, so they end up breaking up with the person just so that they don't break up with them. Like that was kind of like how it was going down because he's like, you know what, you need to, you know, the Fireflies, you go to, you know, and
Yeah.
that kind of makes Ellie go, well, what the fuck, I'm gonna get out of here. And
Yeah.
so that whole scene where they're upstairs, you know, and she's just like, everybody I ever cared about died except fucking you. So like
Yeah.
outright stating like, I care about you, damn it. Like everybody's dead and you're the only one that's here and you're essentially saying that you're going to leave me? Fuck you. You know?
Yeah. It's definitely a split in their relationship. Like, and I think it does it, having replayed it recently, does it seem to you like this is the culmination throughout this part of the story of her distrust in him really going into effect?
Well, I wouldn't say it's distrust. I would say that this is the culminate, like, because this happened right after the Hunters, and so
Yeah.
that was the moment that they're really bonding. And so, yeah, she just trusted him, but after everything they went through, after him giving her a gun, giving her that responsibility, saying, "Hey, thank you for saving my life," it was either me or them. You know, going through
Yeah.
that experience together really just cemented them. So for him to just basically be like, nah, fuck it, I'm out or whatever, which
Yeah.
although it was a defense mechanism, she was basically just calling him out on his bullshit and be like, nah, man, fuck you. Like you can't do this, you know? And like I'd never done this before. This is my fourth playthrough. I'd never done this before. When he makes the decision to take her, I started tearing up. It wasn't like, you know, like I wasn't bawling, but I definitely started tearing up this time because I was like, I knew what that meant to him. Because it's like, just like you said, you pick up on certain things that you never picked up on before. And that emotion of him just, you know, the whole realization that it's a defense mechanism, that never occurred to me all the other times I played it. And this was the first time I really, like, yeah, he wants to get rid of her because he just cares about her so damn much. And even when
Yeah.
he's like, you know what, let's get one thing clear. You are not my daughter. You know, that whole point is like him trying to push her away and be like, no, I don't want this, you know, and it's a defense mechanism. And so for him to just be like, you know what, where'd you say it was? All right, Ellie, why don't you give him the horse and come hop on? And you can see it in her face. And that was the moment that really got me to tear up. You could see in her face where she's like, he's going to take me. Like, oh, man. So fucking good.
Yeah. It's such a great familial moment because you're back with your brother, your actual family, and
Yeah.
then it kind of cements that with him. It's giving you the pairing between his actual family and his surrogate family,
Yes.
in a way. Surrogate family being Ellie, so it's a nice little in a non like aggressive way 1-2 punch to your emotions in a way.
Yeah, definitely. So from there, we go to the college, which has a lab in it for the most part, it's very uneventful, other than obviously you have a couple of encounters. But by saying something in The Last of Us is quote unquote uneventful, there's a very high bar for uneventful because every encounter is set up masterfully. It's like I have to go do this. Well, how do I achieve that goal? You know, so nothing is ever set up just like go from point A to point B and boom, you're there. Nothing's ever set up that way. So by me saying it's uneventful, all I'm saying is that you go through, you find out the fireflies out there. The big thing happens at the very end where Joel gets freaking impaled.
Oh my god.
This part just scared the shit out of me because I'm like, oh shit, what about Ellie? You know, like I wasn't even thinking about like Joel or whatever. I was like, oh shit, Ellie. Like, what's gonna happen to Ellie? And so
I thought the same thing.
Yeah. So then like fighting your way out of there was also like almost like a proud dad moment where you're like, Ellie's kicking fucking ass. And obviously you're helping, but it's like having her like flank that one guy and then like, like it's intense. Like,
yeah. And I think with this, that whole area is eventful and uneventful in a way. I can remember the first time. I don't remember what the big giant cordyceps infected's name was.
The bloaters?
Do you recall? Yeah, I think it's the bloater.
I don't know if they're called bloaters, but that's what I call them, I guess.
Having to maneuver them in between the hallways of like the dormitories and that whole setting. Like, isn't that where the giraffe is?
No, that's much later.
Oh, that's right. There is an ambient scene in the college itself that I can recall, but yeah, that was my exact same reaction when he fell on that basically glass or that spike, whatever it was. It's like, rebar. Oh my god, like rebar. Thank you. This is why you keep me in check because you played it recently and I didn't.
Yeah.
But like the feeling of dread, like what's going to happen, and then for me, I think this is the key moment in the game where I struggled with the scene following of it was when it goes into winter, correct?
Yes, that's when it kind of smash cut. Once you get on the horse and you fall off, it kind of like smash cuts because she's like, "Come on, you can't do this to me, you can't do this," and then it smash cuts to winter. Now, I don't know if you guys did this at home. But what I did is I actually played this chronologically. So as soon as it smashed to winter, I actually switched over to the Left Behind DLC, and I finished that before moving on.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you ever play?
I've never done that before. I started Left Behind, but it was a corrupt file kind of situation.
Oh,
and
no.
I never I have it in my library and I own it. I just haven't re-downloaded it.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, it kind of was one of those. I don't want to spur the like, oh, that's going to make me think about this. But this whole beginning winter section here, when it kind of goes into, you playing as Ellie for the first time by yourself and having to fend against yourself, stressed me the fuck out.
Yeah, because the whole time you're like, is Joel okay? What the hell?
Yeah, and it's like, when it gets into the whole snowstorm situation where you snuck into town, like you come across a couple people that, automatically you don't trust, rightfully so.
Right.
And then, the actual gameplay function of it, I was like, oh my god, like this is stealth I hate. Like I don't like this. Yeah. I don't want to kind of go around. And then I think to me, the boss battle in the end of this level is the most stressful part in the game, hands down.
Yeah, because I mean that guy, like he's clearly out to get you. He's clearly like he's gonna chop you up into little pieces, to put it in Ellie's words.
And feel free to go through the actual what's happening in the story. This part, the story of it, I don't really recall. I just remember the stress of the gameplay.
So yeah, you're in winter. You go get a deer. You meet up with the two guys. At first, obviously, you don't trust them or whatever. You go through this whole kind of action sequence where you're basically trying to survive from infected. Everything's fine, and then suddenly he's all like, I get it. You're trying to survive. A couple weeks back, I sent out some of my people, and they got killed. It was such a weird thing because it was by a guy and a little girl, and so it was like, like, oh shit, like,
yeah.
you realize that, oh god, this is the leader of that fucking people that we just sniped and stabbed, and like, oh shit, like that realization or whatever. Also, I love the realization of, so you're going through, you're trying to get the deer, and the whole time all you want to know is Joel okay? Like, she doesn't say anything. All you're worried about is getting some food so that like you can survive or whatever. And it's that moment where like the guy's like trying to barter with you, and he's like, do you need any medicine? You're like, medicine, antibiotics. As soon as she said antibiotics, I'm like, oh, he's okay.
Yeah, it's one of those that I think it really, like, for that first probably 20 minutes, that stress is like, am I going to be playing as Ellie the rest of the game? Right? Like, did he die? Like, it gives you zero answer whatsoever.
Yes, and I love it. Even replaying through it, it's still like, I know, but it's just that like that realization once you know that he's okay. It's like, okay, we're all right, guys. Like, yeah, I love that. So then, yeah, you get captured, which, I mean, I think at first. Oh no! What happens is that you get away from them, but then they follow you back to where you were keeping Joel. So then you basically have to flank around and try to escape. So you're on horseback. You're trying to, GTFO, and then the horse gets shot, and he gets, so the horse is dead. PETA, don't get mad. And then you try to get it out of there, and you get captured. Obviously there's some dialogue about, they're going to chop you up or whatever. But there's also just like this funny moment where she bites him and she's like, I'm infected, and now you are, motherfucker.
Yeah.
I don't think she says like, motherfucker, but she's something along the lines of, ha ha, fucker.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those moments where it's like, oh, you are still a kid,
right.
Instead of it just, and like, what I think helps build the whole tension of this entire scene is when you do get captured, like, yes, you mentioned it, cutting you up into little pieces. You're, as a kid, seeing these people chop up human body parts, and it's like, what the fuck is going on? And it like adds, it kind of gives you a little bit more freedom to just kill everybody, right? Because it's kind of very similar to
it's your blank check where you could just be like, nah, fuck it all.
Yeah, what was the name of the town from The Walking Dead? When like they finally made it to the sanctuary and it wasn't sanctuary.
Ooh, Terminus?
Yes. Yeah. It's very much similar to that, where it's like, at first it's like, oh, this welcoming people, and then you see what happens. It's like, fucking kill them all, dude. Right? Like, it's so satisfying. Time. Yeah. And so, I mean, this is definitely, I think this is one of those scenes that will actually plant a seed into Ellie later on, leading into Last of Us Part 2, honestly.
Good
because
point. Very good.
This gives her full reign, full distrust in the humanity of people, and her
really good point.
Her survival instincts are really like put to the test, and great scene. That so moment, stressful.
That moment where she like you're reaching out, you grab the machete, you're like pow, and you just boom, 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 boom. Boom, and you're just like whack-a-moling his fucking head with a machete, and Joel shows up and you're like, oh god, and you just like, you hold her tight, and it's like that's what I would have done. And so it's like, it's almost like I felt it, like I felt that emotion of just like, it's okay, baby girl, it's okay.
And I think that's the first time Joel's seen what Ellie has the ability to do.
Right. Yeah, because she definitely, like, she had the sniper rifle, she's proved herself capable. But seeing her in that was just like, oh shit, like she's, oh god, yeah. So this is when we get to the one part that you mentioned before. We smash cut to, I believe it's summer now. We're in a new town, and there's this huge juxtaposition. Because before, Ellie would not shut the hell up, and she just wanted to talk about everything. Hey, look at this poster. Hey, look at this sign about quarantine. Hey, look at this. Hey, look at that. All of a sudden, Joel is the one who's talking about everything. He's like, oh, look at this. Looks like another quarantine zone, just like the other ones. Ha, ha, ha. And you can tell the entire time, he's trying to get her to talk, Because the scene outright starts with him being like, Ellie. Like, did you not hear me? And of course, she's staring at a deer, which is like so symbolic of just like the shit she because that's where it all started, was with that damn deer, you know?
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, that whole moment, and it's like, I hate to keep saying it, but it's like, I feel it. Because it's like, you know, anytime I see Zoe Ann and she's just like in a really bad mood, I'll keep talking to her and she'll just be like, yeah, whatever. And I'm like, but I really want to get her to talk. So I start talking about something. Maybe I try to be silly, you know, I try to get a rise out of her or something like that. And so I totally felt that. But then it was the moment, just like any other moment, you know, we try to get her to boost up, you know, and so we try to get her to boost up, and she's not there.
Yeah, I think that really shows again the evolution of their relationship. You know, she is trying to process the inhumanities that she just witnessed and had to experience and had to do herself, and he sees that, recognizes that, because he's dealt with that for 15 years.
Right.
And it's interesting that you see Joel, who he used to be, start to come back because he's trying to bring her back. And you know, so it, and I think what a really good titular point in this scene is whenever they, you know, finally get access, you know, into the building, and you know, she's just been full of misery and dread, and there is this moment that is built for the player as well as the characters, because that's, as the player, what you've experienced for the past few hours is just dread and misery.
Yeah.
And this was kind of one of those like revolutionary things on PS3, like this landscape opening up. You get this interaction where the giraffe like comes through, and as a player, it lets you sit on that moment. It wants you to actively like touch the giraffe, like it gives you the action to do it yourself, and it's given you that moment to pause and reflect on what's going on. And for Ellie too, I think it shows some light that she hasn't seen for a while, and it kind of helps bring her back a little bit. But you know, you still see that emptiness, that vacuum is there from what was just taken. Right. And the whole beginning of this scene is a great. I mean, this is considered what, the start of the third act, or
this is
conclusion.
Yeah, this is kind of the start of the last act, really.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because it immediately leads into you guys finding the fireflies.
Pretty much.
But and that also is kind of a good way to look at it too, is it's the start, it's the piece right before the very end. It's like when you're playing an arcade game and you walk into this tunnel and it's a really like it's full of health and ammunition. It's like, great, shit. I've been needing this. But I think something bad's about to happen. Right. That's another good sign of this.
Yeah, it's this just absolute poignant moment of just reprieve, you know, which also should have been like a big red flag that something else was going to happen other than the pile of ammo. Like, that should have been a huge, you know, things are going to go down. So, you get a ton of infected. You get to the fireflies, which, leading up to that, like, Ellie's essentially drowning. You're performing CPR, and these fucking soldiers come up, and they're like, you know, hands up. It's just like, no, she's not breathing. You get knocked out. So you're like, of course, we're in another impasse where we're just like, what the hell just happened? Is she okay?
Yeah. It leaves you like hanging, like, what the hell is going on? But it's also one of those, like, for the entire game, you've had this thought of the fireflies, and it's like, oh, like, it's a welcoming group. And you have this interaction, it's like, oh, it's not. Like, we're back to where we were, pretty much held captive. Like, it kind of gives you a feeling of losslessness.
Yeah. Which, brings us to the big twist at the end.
Yeah, first off, this whole scene itself, as a player and as, like, just an observer, like, experiencing this, how gripping. Just absolutely... And again, like, when I first played this, I didn't like it. I didn't like that choice at all. But like, I'm going to be talking in the context of me understanding. When you finally get to your end goal, hey, we're bringing, you know, we went through all this together. Ellie, like, she's going to help save people, which, you know, we didn't really mention at all, but Ellie's immune. You find it out, you know, pretty early on, like at the very beginning when you meet her. Immediately. So that's the whole, you know, you go throughout the whole journey, and you get to this point where it's like, okay, we're finally here. Hey, guess what? In order to save everyone else and fix this, she has to die. Like they pretty much don't sugarcoat it. It's one of those like, hey, this is going to happen. And looking at like experiencing that scene again when he decides to just so abruptly say, no, fuck it, I'm taking her, you're not having her, like was like, wow, that is powerful. Like that's the selfishness in a way, but the amount of love he has for this person that he will literally in the next 5 minutes kill everyone he sees to get her out of there. And like it's one of those that it's satisfying in terms of the typical action game of just killing enemy kind of things, but it also makes you grip. The game makes you grip with the reality of this isn't okay what I'm doing. I'm not a good person right now. I'm killing a lot of these people.
I'm the villain of the story almost.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what you end the game on in a lot of ways, is you being the bad guy. And I didn't understand that and didn't really enjoy that at first, but like again playing through it and feeling the amount of hopelessness throughout the entire game, it's just like, oh, this makes sense. Like I understand the purpose of this now.
Right.
And it's one of those that I think is revolutionary against looking back to what you said earlier of Naughty Dog hasn't done this before. I haven't really seen many games do this before. It's such a cinematic way of making you not have a happy ending or not have a happy conclusion to this 10-hour to this 10-hour experience you just had, or however long.
It was such a weird moment because I'm totally on your side. The first time this happened, I'm like, that's it? Like, what the hell? Because it's like you fought tooth and nail for this to happen. And so for not only for you to make the decision that I don't care what Ellie thinks, I'm going to save her. Like that by itself is just like, okay, that's a little fucked up. So not only to have that part, but then also to outright lie to her and be like, oh yeah, there were tons of immune people there. It did no good. They gave up on making it. So it's like you make up this elaborate lie other than just saying, yeah, we couldn't find anybody, so I decided to leave.
Yeah.
Like, instead, you went the extra mile to come up with a lie that you knew would make it so that she wouldn't want to go back and try herself.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, at that point, like even though she was young and she's a child, like she understands that what she has to do.
Right.
But Joel doesn't want to let her go, and you can't blame him. That's the thing, is you can't blame him at all because he already lost a daughter. He doesn't want to lose another one.
Right.
If he does, that pretty much will kill him. That's the amount of thought that they're putting towards it. But the fact of him just saying, I don't care, it's very much in a more beautiful way Thanos-esque. And I say that because I think culturally No. I think culturally, like Thanos in popular media is one of the most non-polarizing villains that we've had because everyone kind of understands where he's coming from. He's not wrong. Maybe what he's doing to get to his end goal is wrong.
Right.
But
the goal end game.
Yeah. But it's like, that's how you feel with Joel. It's like, I don't agree with what he's doing right now or what I'm doing. I'm doing exactly what, I don't want to do, but I can understand it.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's such a weird position it puts you in.
Honestly, the number one thing that bothered me about the ending is that there's this little 5-minute thing at the very end where suddenly you take control of Ellie again just to talk to Joel, tell him a little bit about your backstory, and then basically give him an out. Like, hey, is everything you told me about the Fireflies true? He's like, yes, and you're like, okay. And then it goes to black. And I'm like, wait, okay, so that's it? She just believes him? Or she doesn't believe him, which is the whole point of that scene, is to show that she doesn't trust him, but is willing to move on. I didn't like that. And even after rolling credits this weekend, I was still kind of like, I don't know if that 5 minutes is necessary. I don't know, in order to tell their story, other than it cemented Joel as a bad guy. And so I don't know how I feel about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, hopefully that scene in particular leads us perfectly or smoothly into The Last of Us Part 2.
Yes.
And maybe that will be kind of a story beat or a story point of her having a distrust for him again after they've even after they've grown together.
Right. And
So
who knows, maybe part of the, central plot is going to be around the Fireflies. Maybe they came and got their revenge somehow,
I kind of hope so, because the story, like from what Neil Druckmann, everyone said, this is a story about hate and revenge.
Right.
Like maybe it's not just Ellie's revenge.
Yeah.
Because I think if that's the case, that would be very. Naughty Dog does a good job of being complex. If the game is just about her hatred and her revenge to get back on people, I think that's too simple. And I think that there's something else that Naughty Dog's going to do to counterbalance that.
Yeah. So, I mean, bringing up Last of Us Part 2, obviously, since this is the road to Last of Us Part 2, there's one last thing I think we can sort of talk about. I tried my hardest. I haven't looked at any full reviews of The Last of Us Part 2, but it's hard to not at least look at the overall vibe. So, there's tons of 10s, tons of 9s, tons of 8s. But it is kind of weird because there are a lot of people who are just genuinely or generally complaining about like the second half part of the game. And I'm like, God dang it. Like that kind of like makes me a little weary. Like I'm still going to play through it. And there's like a 99% chance I'm still going to love it. But it's just so weird. I don't know if we're coming up to another like The Last Jedi moment where a bunch of people are building up expectations and then the characters make a decision that they don't necessarily agree with, and so then it ruins the rest of the game for them. And it's like, I don't know. To me, that's kind of what I'm reading into, that people just don't agree with where they decided to take the story. And I'm like, instead of complaining about where the story is going, why don't you just experience the story? Like, once again, that's without me playing it, obviously, but it's still just such a weird thing to think that, like, I don't like the choices that the characters make no sense. It's like, I don't know. Ellie's getting put into a situation where she is full of rage. You don't make rational decisions when you're full of rage. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Once again, we haven't played it yet. We're going to do like a spoiler cast probably a couple weeks from now. But like, I don't know. We're in a weird place where it's like, we haven't played it, but a bunch of people have, and they're really high on it, but also not at the same time. It's weird.
Yeah. It's definitely, I think the sentiment that I have seen that excites me, because it reminds me of the first Last of Us, is that this movie, or this game, I mean, it might as well be a movie at this point. This game is going to be a character study from now on.
Right.
Like, this is going to be discussed in society between a lot of different people who either agree with it or don't agree with it, or like it or don't like it, and why. And I think that's what's fascinating. I think that's what is it's what excites me to play, is to finally experience it and then either be a part of that conversation or understand that conversation. And I mean, in a very vain way, I am so excited to play this game because, good Lord.
Vain. You probably think this song is about
how beautiful this game looks. I am excited to experience this game. Like, PS5 is right around the corner, but oh my God, like everything I've seen from this is like, I can't wait to watch this on my 4K TV and like,
Well, I kind of like what you were saying near the beginning, how like Last of Us was the swan song of the PlayStation 3. Now we get Last of Us Part 2 is the swan song of PlayStation 4. Like, I can't wait for that. Like,
what the hell is Naughty Dog going to do for PS5?
Oh, God. Jizz in my pants.
So, I think what I'm going to do exactly, now that I think about it, is I am going to pick up The Last of Us Part 2. As far as me, I am not exactly sure because, if you can't tell, things are a little different. We've moved, so bad time for a game to come out right now, and I can't really afford it. So I think, Nick will take a lead on a lot of this in general. But
I'm going to binge it over the weekend. I have Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. I will most likely be done by Sunday, if not a good fucking chunk of the way through.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to get it sooner than other games that I've tried to play before, but I can definitely see myself if I do get a PS5 come fall, come winter, whenever it is, come holiday season, that if they release the PS5 version of it, I will 100% pick it up, because like the idea of all of the things that you feel and experience in the game, being able to do that actually with the DualSense controller, dude, come on. Imagine the feeling, the haptic feeling of you crafting the Molotov. Yeah.
Yeah, right. All right, so that's our overall thoughts of The Last of Us heading into The Last of Us Part 2. What did you guys think? What parts did we forget to mention? Everything and anything down in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much. We've been creating a lot of content lately. It really has been fun. With this new PC that I got, it's really kind of opened us up to be able to create a lot more for you guys, which is awesome. Well, gosh, sorry. That being said, it's more important than ever to like, share, subscribe, because now we're able to make stuff that's at a higher bar, and so we want to share it with people. We want people to know about it. So if you guys, we've said it 1,000 times, but if you guys could like, share, subscribe, comment, any kind of traffic is good traffic. So we really appreciate you guys coming back, week after week after week. And we hope to keep just bringing you guys more and more. This one is getting very rambunctious. We're going to stop the recording. So thank you guys so much for joining us on the road to Last of Us Part 2. I was Nick.
And I was Nate.
And you guys have a good day. Bye.
Bye.